Welcome back to the Jack Sunday Show. This is Brad Jackson, and I'm psyched out of my mind to do the show because for the past couple of weeks I've had COVID, and you may have noticed we didn't do a show the last couple of weeks. We just did kind of a live Q&A. But I'm super happy to be back. I feel top of the world, and today's show is about tube screamers, and this is what $1 will buy you. My name is Brad Jackson, and whether I'm flying airplanes or building pedals, I'm always learning. Join me, and together we'll expand our horizons. This is Jackson Audio. The year was 1992. A young Brad Jackson had just started playing guitar because he heard a new band, well, new to him, called Dire Straits. Well, my brother and I and my family were at a garage sale in Bedford, Texas, of all places where I grew up. And my brother and I saw this sitting on the table. We didn't know what it was. We knew that it was for guitar because we just started playing guitar a few months earlier. The price tag said $1. Young Corey Jackson purchased it for $1. We got home, not really knowing what to do with it, not knowing what an overdrive was because we were very, very early in the craft. Plugged it in, sounded great. You know, I'm sure we sounded terrible, but the pedal sounded great. We didn't know what it was. We didn't know the history behind it. We certainly didn't know the appeal behind the product. But my dad took my brother and I to a guitar show in Fort Worth. I think maybe just a month or two later, and we saw this pedal sitting on the table for $800. We knew, holy cow, this is something special. So thus began the process of kind of learning about what a tube screamer was. We figured out pretty quick that Stevie played them. Back then, I think Eric Johnson played them as well. But we started to realize this was a legendary pedal, and we had just gotten the deal of the century on a classic pedal. So I've used this pedal since I was 12 years old. I'm 41 now. It's been the only pedal that I've used in all that time that's never left my board under any circumstances. I wouldn't take money for it. It's very sentimental to me. And I love the story behind it because how often do you get a really great piece of classic gear for $1 at a garage sale? So let's talk today about tube screamers. They're very, very polarizing, but they shouldn't be. They're something that every guitar player needs in their arsenal because they do something for your tone that nothing else will do. People say that, oh, it's got too much of a mid-hump. Well, you're a guitar player, aren't you? You are a mid-range instrument. So if you want to be heard, this guy helps you be heard in a mix. If you want to be buried in a mix, go ahead and scoop your mids out. Just get rid of them, and no one will hear you. It'll be all bass, all drums, and you'll be somewhere in there, but no one will know what you're playing typically. This guy helps solve that. This guy breaks you out, makes your parts stick out, and hopefully you're playing good parts, so you want them to stick out. This one helps with that. There are two main ways people use tube screamers. You can run it overdrive fairly low, level really hot, and use it as a boost. That's what a lot of your better players will do. I've heard John Mayer say that this knob, the overdrive knob, is the cheat knob. Like the higher you get it, the more you're cheating. You should have it down lower, crank the level up, and just slam the snot out of the front of your amp. And we'll talk about that here in a second. There's a technique I want to show you with my Fender Twin, how to get a really great sound out of a Fender Twin. And that setting is called the Magic 6. I've heard a lot of guys talk about it. And I've tried to use it on gigs, but the problem is it's just too loud. You have the volume on 6 with the Twin, you're gonna get run out of the room because it's just too loud. The trick is this: run your volume at 6, run your treble at 6, run your mid at 3, run your bass at 2, so 2 times 3, there's your 6, and finally run your reverb around 3. 3 works pretty well for me in reverb. That's the Magic 6. There's a whole long explanation about what's happening inside the amp as far as how the tone stack, the EQ, and the volume is all interacting to make it sound good. But that is a killer sound, and we're going to play with that today. And I can because I have the aux box. I can turn the amp up just as loud as I want, run it at any EQ volume I want. It'll sound great, but then we'll start adding stuff like the tube screamer to that sound, and you'll get an idea of what it sounds like to run the overdrive low, level high. It basically sounds like you've got the amp wide open, like on 10, and we'll show you that. So a tube screamer used as a boost with the amp set at the Magic 6 setting, well, this makes it sound like the amp's wide open, and that's a glorious sound. So this thing kind of helps cheat you on volume. You don't have to like get as loud, but it pushes the amp hard, so it makes the amp work hard and gets you that just wide open sound. So there's one way of running it. The other way of running a tube screamer is just essentially run your volume wherever it needs to be, run your overdrive at however much you want, and you can get some really crushing overdrive sounds out of a tube screamer. That's a totally separate way of running it, but it also does really well. And once you start running the overdrive up higher and higher, well, then your mid hump starts coming out a whole lot more. Again, that's a great sound. So don't be afraid of that. Don't be afraid to experiment with it. always remind yourself, you play a mid-range instrument, you've got to really dial in your mids, and you need to get a pretty good understanding of what frequencies from like 600 to 1K of where you want to sit in the mix, because it's a good part of your education as a guitar player to kind of learn your sweet spot, because that is your sonic playground right there. The bass player is not going to go there, the cymbals aren't going to go there. That's where you live, and you really need to learn how to occupy that space with authority and find a way to dial in your place in the mix. Because in a band, everyone has their own lane. You got to stay in your lane. You start getting too low on your EQ, you're competing with the wrong people, like the bass player and the kick drum. You go too high, you're competing with the singer, cymbals, all that kind of stuff. So find your lane, stay in your lane. This guy can help you get there. So let's talk about that more, and we'll do some playing examples to show what I'm talking about. Okay, guys, we're gonna make some noise now, and I'm gonna kind of walk you through what I've got. 65 Strat. I paid $700 for this. 1980s Tube Screamer. I paid $1 for that. This is a 71 Twin. I paid no dollars for that because my grandfather bought it. So I've got $701 in this rig. You too can have tone like this for upwards of $700. So now I got lucky in all this stuff. This is like blessing from God level stuff where you can have tools like this, tones like this, and a lot of them are associated with family and friends, and that's when gear gets really fun, is when your friends sell you stuff or whatever, so it becomes very personal. But all right, so we're gonna talk the Magic 6. I don't know if you can see this or not, but the volume's on 6, treble's on 6, middle's on 3, bass is on 2, reverb is on 3. It sounds a lot like this. Okay, that to me is a really great, what I call pissed off Strat sound. Tuned down to D, got 13s, 12 or 13s on it. I forget what I got on this guitar, but that to me is just like a good, really angry Strat sound. Volume's on 6, but let me tell you what I like a whole lot better than being on 6. I like it on 10 the most, not just because I like dealing in excess in every area of my life. It sounds amazing, it feels amazing, it wants to break up, it wants to sustain, but you can't find I mean, maybe if you're John Mayer, I don't know, maybe not even him can put a twin reverb on 10 and get away with it. So the aux box, again, for the win, this is why this thing is amazing, because you can harness the power of the beast and your wife will still stay married to you. So I feel like that's a financially responsible move, because divorces, they're not cheap, but auxes, I mean, for $1,200, I mean, you can't even talk to a lawyer for less than $1,200, so it can save you a lot of money. So here's how it sounds on 10. Not bad. I mean, I'm not the greatest player, but that sounds like a true Stevie Ray Vaughan-y kind of tone. So anyway, okay, here's the trick. Keep your volume on 6, maybe use something like an aux box or attenuator. Run your overdrive low on your Tube Screamer. Run your volume high. Let's hear, I'm gonna put the tone 12 o'clock just as a start. This is my old one. Let's see how it sounds. Kick some of that brightness back just a little bit. I'm gonna point the tone control at the overdrive control. Overdrive's all the way down, levels all the way up. Okay, so at 6, with the Tube Screamer slamming the front of the amp, it sounds a lot to me like the amp on 10. All right, there's how a lot of guys will use the Tube Screamer. They'll use it as a boost to pound the front of a Fender amp. Let's cheat, like John Mayer says. Let's cheat a little bit, kick the level back to a reasonable level, bring the overdrive up. Let's put the volume back at 6, kind of a human territory. Let's see how that sounds. overall a gainier sound, but you're kind of getting into that somewhat dumble-y thing. So that to me is the two really good sounds on Tube Screamer. Of course, yeah, you can gank it all the way up and just. That to me is the strength of the Tube Screamer right there. I've got the overdrive all the way up, the levels, 12 o'clock, tones, 12 o'clock. Tons of gain, but it never loses that clarity. There's one thing about that sound that's really important to note. Did you notice how tons of gain, but the low end stayed really articulate and snappy? There's a quote from Stevie. He says, he wants his top end to be really stinging and biting, but he wants his low end to be super clean. Like, hear the bite on top, but hear the low end. So, if my memory serves, the low end roll off on a Tube Screamer, which is where you get the perceived mid boost, hits right at, I think, 760 hertz. So you're not really getting a mid boost out of a Tube Screamer as much as you're getting a low cut. But because right at that frequency, which is a critical mid frequency, you're getting a really strong bump in gain, you perceive that as a huge bump in mids. That's everything for the Tube Screamer. That's why they work. That's why they're popular. Because that frequency is just a great guitar frequency. And they accentuate it, they punch it, and they roll off all the bass. Like the, let's see, this right here, that's 220. This right here is 110. Those are getting attenuated really hard in a Tube Screamer type circuit, and it works great. Pardon the text message. Okay, those frequencies of 100 hertz, down to like 50 hertz, those are great frequencies to play with. They feel really, really good when you're like in your bedroom goofing off doing like. It sounds really good and full, but in a band context, it's typically going to be mixed out because the sound engineer is not going to need that much low end from you. That's why this pedal works. It performs the role of a sound engineer tweaking your low end for you automatically. So one of the tricks in life, as it comes to guitar players, is if you want more low end or you want a tighter low end, take low end out. It's completely counterintuitive. The thought is, well, if I just add more bass, I'll have more low end. That's not how that works. You won't get this. You won't get that snappy, tight bass with the bass control jacked. I've got my bass control on too, and it sounds huge in the room. So that's a long kind of a primer on how to use Tube Screamers to dial in your sound, why they're super useful and very often misunderstood, but they are a critical tool for guitar players. What I have here are two identical Tube Screamers. This is not a reissue. If you can believe it, that is a 1980s Tube Screamer. It belongs to a friend of mine. He paid a whopping $800 for it, and it looks brand new. I paid $1 for this one. It looks like trash. They both sound pretty close, but I just want to do a demonstration of what $1 will get you, what $800 will get you. So you can see, do you have to find one that's trashed out like Stevie's was, or do you have to find one that's just in great shape? We'll play both, you decide. I'm gonna kind of noodle here and compare my beat up 80s Tube Screamer to a pristine 80s Tube Screamer. I hear a little bit of difference. Tell you what you do. I know what I hear. Let's see what you hear. In the comments, write what you hear the difference is. If you can tell the difference between the two, let us know and see if we agree on it. But I know exactly what I hear. So the volume's on 6, pedals, everything's 12 o'clock. Let's see what we hear. Old one, beat up, mint condition. Question is, in my opinion, the big question is, do you have to go spend $800 like my buddy did on this pedal? Well, we were going to try to find out, but we went to the local guitar center to try to find a tube screamer, any tube screamer. They didn't have any. It was completely sold out. So it's kind of annoying that you couldn't go get one, but the thought crossed our minds. That's a pretty good compliment. If this pedal is so legendary from the 80s to 2020, it's just a killer pedal. They don't have it in stock because everybody wants it because it does a thing that's very musical that nothing else does. So I think it's something you should really consider having in your toolkit. Maybe it's not your everyday, all day long pedal. Maybe you're more like a blues breaker guy where you want the flat EQ. But still, it's really good to have something like this in your arsenal because it's a reference tone. An engineer will come to you and say, hey, can you kind of give me the mid thing or the mid bump thing like a tube screamer? You should have that in your backpack somewhere. Just doesn't have to be a vintage unit. You can go get any one of a number of pedals that do the tube screamer thing, and you can do it for like $80 if you're trying to save money. But it's good to have in your kit on your pedal board because it's just something that it does something nothing else will do. And hopefully if you can have that sound in your arsenal, you'll get more gigs, you'll get more work, and people will come to view you as a person who has the tools to do the job every time. Well, that's it for the Tube Screamer episode today. Love this pedal. It's always a joy to play. If you have any questions about it, chip stuff, like really nerdy stuff, ask questions below and we'll get back to you and see if we can help you out. For next week's episode, we always do the Ask Jackson thing. We don't have time for it in this episode because it's kind of a full episode. But get on our website, fill out the form for Ask Jackson, ask us any question. If we pick your question and put it on the show, we will send you a pedal of your choice. We've already sent out about 6 pedals to guys for the Ask Jackson segment. So we're serious. We will send you pedals if you send us good content. So help us out. We'll help you out. Thanks for watching, guys. It's such a pleasure to be back on my feet and back on the show. Looking forward to hearing your comments. Looking forward to see you soon. Take care.